Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. This video is in response to statements made by football legend Ray Lewis and basketball legend Shaquille O'Neal. They recently made statements critical of Colin Kaepernick and his protests against police brutality. As many people know, Kaepernick has decided that he will not stand during the playing of the national anthem and protests against police brutality. So he has come under fire in many quarters, and a lot of people have praised him as well. People such as myself, we support what he is doing. But I was listening to Shaquille O'Neal, and Shaquille O'Neal said quite a few things about this issue. First of all, he asked, why didn't Colin Kaepernick do this protest last year or the year before or prior years? Why now? So he's really questioning Kaepernick's motivations. Even though he says to each his own, but he's questioning his motivations. The fact of the matter is people awaken at different times. There's always a moment for someone to gain a moment of clarity. There's always a time for people to finally wake up from the deep slumber and come into political consciousness and awareness. So the timing is really irrelevant. People could have said the same thing about Malcolm X. They could have said, well, why didn't you wake up before you went to jail? Why didn't you wake up before you engaged in certain criminal activity? The awakening comes when it comes. The point is not to criticize people for not waking up fast enough. The point is people need to be praised for waking up, because far too many people among us are sleeping. They are still trapped in the matrix. They still suffer from psychological slavery. So this brother should be commended for waking up, not questioned about the timing of waking up. Also, Shaquille O'Neal went on to say, my father was a military man. He protected this country. And he also went on to talk about how he had uncles in law enforcement. And he said that he would never participate in this type of protest. And also, Ray Lewis made similar statements. He talked about supporting the military. He talked about people dying for this country. And he also talked about how the flag unites the American people as a nation. And he went on to say that Colin Kaepernick is choosing the wrong stage to affect his protests. And he also said that Colin Kaepernick should go to the hood and make change there. And Ray Lewis cited examples of how he is creating jobs in tough neighborhoods and all that kind of stuff. And he said that people can't just give money. They need to get out there into the streets and be involved in the community. Now, I don't disagree with the statements about being involved in the community. Obviously, people need to do that. But there's a difference between community service and addressing problems of injustice. There's a difference between doing social justice work and doing community service. This brother Kaepernick is speaking out on a social justice issue. Simply visiting neighborhoods or even creating jobs and things like that, those are good things, but they don't address the fundamental problem that this brother is speaking out against, which is police brutality. That problem has to be addressed head on. And this brother has addressed it head on by engaging in this act of protest, this act of civil disobedience. His action has brought more attention to this issue than a lot of essays, than a lot of other types of protests. So I commend this brother for doing so. I commend him for standing up. And many other football players and other athletes are following his examples, as they should. Now I want to address this question of people saying, well, they have people in the military and all this and that, and they think that somehow this protest is disrespectful towards the military. This brother is not protesting against people in the military. This brother is protesting against police brutality. The national anthem has nothing to do with military service. In fact, that very national anthem is a racist national anthem. Many people aren't aware of the second verse to the national anthem that celebrates the killing of black slaves. How can any black man in their right mind support such a song? That's what I want to know. This brother is not speaking out against the military. He's speaking out against police brutality and injustice in the society. And people talk about how these military soldiers and people who are in other capacities in the military, they talk about how they fought for freedom and all this and that, and for that reason we can't violate the national anthem by not standing up to it. This is what I'll say to that. Assuming arguendo that these military people actually did fight for our freedom, one of the fundamental freedoms of the American people is the freedom of speech. So if these people fought and died for freedom, why are you trying to inhibit this brother from exercising his freedom by participating in this protest? The second point that I want to make is this. People often say that these military soldiers and stuff fought and died for democracy and freedom. But the fact of the matter is, too often, they are not fighting for American freedom. They are not fighting for democracy. They are fighting to promote the interests of the 1% in this country, the capitalist ruling elite in this country. They are fighting and dying for corporations, fighting and dying so that companies like Halliburton, BP, Exxon, and all these other companies can gain resources and more wealth from other nations. That's the sad reality. They are fighting for dominance of the world's resources. It's time for us to end this charade that these people are actually fighting and dying for democracy when they're not. That is just propaganda to encourage more people to be pawns of this system. That's what it's doing. You can't say that you're fighting for democracy when the United States supports some of the worst dictatorships in the world. When the United States has overthrown democratically elected governments. When the United States invades and bombs and kills women and children, you can't talk to me about the United States fighting to protect democracy. So that's my point on that issue. And then people want to talk about how they have people in their family that are in the military, well, not just the military, but in law enforcement. They talk about how they have friends and family in law enforcement, and Shaquille O'Neal again mentioned that he has uncles in law enforcement, and he could never do something like that. Number one, again, this protest is not against all police officers. The protest is against police brutality. That's what the protest is against. It is not against your uncle or your brother or somebody like that who's in law enforcement. It's against police misconduct and police brutality. That's what he's protesting. And no police officer who is a quote-unquote good police officer should be troubled by somebody standing up and speaking out against police brutality. In fact, they should support that cause. If they're about upholding the law and protecting and serving, then they need to be in a position to protect the people from police who violate their duties and obligations, who use their badge as a cover for criminal activity. So these good cops need to stand up to police brutality as well. These quote unquote good cops need to do that. And they need to commend this brother for standing up. So those are my thoughts on this issue. It's just a shame that so many of our people are so eager to please Mr. Charlie. They're so eager to say, I would never do that, boss. That's essentially what you had these people doing. They're tap dancing and they're shucking and jiving and cooning so that they can get white approval. And when I was watching this Shaq interview, he kept fawning over that white woman who was one of the people interviewing him on Fox News. And that's another important point. He was on Fox News, a channel that's dedicated to defending killer cops, a channel that's dedicated to defending people like George Zimmerman who killed a young black boy. It's just so much that I could say about this, but I have to get out of here. So tell me what you all think. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.